admit, I never ever thought that I would hear that again. First of all, special shout out to Tidal Wave Studios, Ricardo and Natalie for putting that together for me, because that is the sound of the Inside Voice podcast. Beautiful job on that. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the work that you guys did on that. Also to Lauren Ligon for the Inside Voice podcast logo design. We're back. And I gotta admit, I never thought that I would be doing this again. When I finished the first version of the Inside Voice podcast, like, it was done. It was absolutely done. I never thought that I'd be sitting here doing this again. Certainly not like this. Like, hello, talk about an upgrade. Season 2, here we go. We're filming now. And I feel like you have to do that these days. Like 2025, 21st century. Like that's the way we're living these days. If they don't see your face, like it never really happened. But as far as finishing the podcast, man, I honestly thought this is it. That was a chapter of my life. That was a season of my life. I don't even know if I actually said goodbye. I don't even know. I probably just ghosted every single one of you. If you gave up and never wanted to come back to the podcast, like, I don't blame you at all, because I literally was the bad person in the relationship that just said, I'm out, and wasn't, I don't know, confident enough, wasn't strong enough to like tell you that I was leaving. Like, I would have been better off just sending a text message and just saying it was done. I could have shared on social media at the very least and said, all right, we're done. But, and it is funny, I had somebody ask me not too long ago if I was still doing the podcast, and I had to break it to him that I was not. God bless. And it's been a minute. It's been a minute since the podcast has happened, but I was totally fine telling people I'm done. I did it for 3 years. It was a chapter of my life. I'm done. But it's a funny thing when you're told to pick something up again. It's a funny thing when you realize, maybe I should go back and start again. It's really difficult though, right? It just, so many things go through your mind, insanity first and foremost. At least that was for me. But also you start thinking about all the reasons why you shouldn't go back and try again. You shouldn't go back and begin again. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we don't allow ourselves to go back and try something again is because of shame. Obviously it didn't work out for a reason. And why would I go back? I mean, that's complicated, and there's a lot that goes into it. And what are people going to think? Like, are people going to think that I'm an idiot for going back? Like, people are going to ask questions? They're going to ask these questions of like, well, what happened the first time? Why didn't this work out the first time? And it can really start to mess with you. But I gotta be honest, I wanted to do this again. I feel, we all talk about calling, we talk about purpose, that kind of stuff. I feel as if I was called to do this again. I feel like I was put in a position to take that season, take that beat, and then come back and do it again. Come back and share, come back and just do life with people again. Obviously, I talk for a living in my 9-to-5 job. I talk for a living with my career. I'm in broadcast. I do country music, and I love it. But there's an element of connection with people that I want outside of that, and I think that's where this is going to be. And so for those of you who are new, hi, welcome to the Inside Voice podcast. We're going to call this season 2. Because we can call it season 2. We don't even have to acknowledge that we took this break. We can just call what was for the first 3 years season 1 and move on to season 2. And if we want to continue this and make next year season 3 and next year season 4 and so on and so forth, we can do that. Like, we're just going to make up our own rules here, okay? I mean, this is already so much different than the first edition of the Inside Voice podcast. I was chatting with people about it, and I remember talking to my dad about this, and I just thought, man, the first season just felt very much like self-serving to me. And I even had somebody who was listening to the podcast, and he said, it feels like you're kind of like going through therapy sessions in this podcast, which maybe all podcasts are like that, or a lot of podcasts are. But that kind of bothered me, because I was like, I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk about like my problems and stuff like that. But I feel like figuring out life together, figuring out things that work and things that don't work together, that's where we're headed with the Inside Voice podcast, season 2. I guess I should tell you where the name came from. When I was a kid, I believed that I was probably truly destined to just talk for a living. I was told countless times, use your inside voice. I was that kid that was loud. I was rambunctious. I wanted to be outside, and I wanted to, play football with my brothers and the boys in the playground and stuff like that. Like I was this wild child, for lack of a better term. And so that kind of changed as I got older. And I think the more experience you have, the more things that you do in life, obviously they shape you into a different person. And, like challenges come your way, traumas come your way, upsets, setbacks, heartbreaks, all that stuff comes your way. And you kind of lose a little bit of yourself. And so being told to always use my inside voice as a kid, it's like I'm finally letting it out as an adult. But also I feel like I have kind of put my voice into a corner. I've kind of just taken myself inward a little bit, especially, with the last couple of years. And if you were a part of season 1 of this podcast, you know that my mom passed away in a very traumatic way. And, it messes with you and it sticks with you. And so I think I turned inward a lot with, most of my adult life. And it's time to let that out. Why not, right? We got one life to live. So I'd be lying if I said that there weren't a lot of things going through my mind with bringing this podcast back. Even just setting up to film this today, so many things happening, like just feeling like I didn't have the words, or was I prepped enough, and do I know where I'm going with this, and everything, even that I'm saying to my dog as I'm getting ready to film this, just sounds stupid. I have days like that in my job when I'm doing, radio, that I just feel like every little thing that comes out of my mouth does not make sense, sounds foolish, and isn't a cohesive sentence. But, those little things are going to creep up. And so I just want to encourage you that if you're like me and you're in this situation where you want to start again, you want to pick up something that you put down for a little bit, you want to explore that hobby again, you want to get back on the horse, so to speak, you have permission to begin again. And again, those little things are going to pop up. Those little things are going to, those little speed bumps, if you will, those are going to hinder you. But ultimately, I'm giving you permission to do it, so go out and do it. But you've got to give yourself permission to do it as well. When you're trying to start something new, it's tough. It's hard to go from 0 to 1. You know what I mean? Like your baseline to like never starting before to have started. And I think that's a little more difficult than once you're in it and you're moving around, right? But I would say that starting again also comes with some baggage, if you will. Starting again also, it comes with its own set of problems, I think the biggest one is that there's a lot of shame in starting again. You think, well, I started once and it didn't work, so why would I go back? You think other people are going to think that as well. Like, well, they're going to wonder like why I started and then I stopped and then I'm starting again. Like, are they going to think that I'm even committed, or is this something that's really going to ever be successful? Blah, 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 yada, yada. We know the whole thing, like people are not thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself. So you don't have to worry about that. But I think the biggest thing is like, you got to let go of all of that. You got to let go of what was. You've got to let go of what could have been. You got to let go of any kind of unfair expectation that you're putting on yourself, and really give yourself grace and give yourself permission to start again. I can give you permission until the cows come home, but it doesn't matter until you give yourself permission and you tell yourself, okay, I can do this. I'm going to set my foot down and take that first step, and we're going to start moving forward. I have an interesting fact for you. You know, we talk about the shame of starting again and what are people going to think. You, like, let that go. And I saw online, I actually looked this up. It's in Psychology Today. 92% of people that set out to do something give up. 92% of people. Last time I checked, that is a huge majority of people that are trying to do something and then they just walk away from it. Now, maybe there were some setbacks, maybe there were some extenuating circumstances, but 92% of people who set out to, you know, like pursue a goal, or they set a resolution for themselves, or they start, you know, moving towards this dream that they have for their life, they don't do it. We'll get into that as the weeks go on. Like, this is my Begin Again series that we're doing here, because I myself am beginning again, and I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm trying new things. Like, look, I have a little setup right here and I've got this whole video thing going on, which is so new and so different. And I don't want to be one of the 92%. I was the 92%, don't get me wrong. So that leaves us with 8%. 8% of people who set a goal or set a dream or start pursuing something in their life actually do it. Actually keep it going. Actually see it to completion. That's an elite number. Just 8%. I don't know about you, but I want to be elite. I want you to want to be elite too. So, and the beauty of this is, maybe, like I said, you were one of the 92%. I was one of the 92%. I started something, and then 3 years later, I put it aside and said, we're good. I mean, people would say, okay, you're not a part of the 92% because you actually did it. You know what I mean? Like, you did the podcast, you did it for a couple of years, you can call it a day, wipe your hands from it, and be like, you're good. But to me, that's not enough. Like, I want to keep this going. I want to build it into something that's greater and makes more of an impact, you know? I want to be that 8%. I want to be elite. So how about we make this pinky promise right here? Okay, there's my pinky. Let's make this pinky promise. Okay, got my pinky? We're going to be elite. Cheesy, I know, but you're not going to forget that. Maybe you can pinky promise yourself in the mirror every morning, you know? Like, is it Mel Robbins that does the high five in the mirror? And that's how she, like, pumps herself up and, like, gives herself a pat on the back, if you will. It's like her method of motivation. Maybe we do the pinky promise with each other. But only 8% are seeing things to completion. And we're talking resolutions, we're talking businesses, we're talking hobbies. It's okay to start over again. And what I was going to say is, like, you might be a part of that 92% you tried before and it didn't work out. The cool thing is you can still be a member of the 8% because you just have to start again, you know? Maybe you started, didn't work out, go back to it, okay? You're not stuck in that 92%. You can be elite. You can be part of that 8%. And I think if we all give ourselves, you know, permission to start again, we can start changing that number. And it's no longer just 8% of people seeing stuff to completion. It's 10% or 18% or 35%. And maybe we'll get to a point where 100% of people that set out to do something will see it to completion. So make that commitment, make that pinky promise to yourself. I just came up with that. I didn't even think about doing that beforehand. So what can we do now as we prepare to begin again? I can take you a little bit of the process of me basically arguing with God first and foremost about coming back and doing this podcast again. That's where I started. But I think it's really, really important for us to sit back and think about why we stopped in the first place. What caused us to quit? And I know that's kind of one of those trigger words. Like, nobody wants to hear the word quit. Like, oh, I didn't quit. Okay, would you rather me use fail? No, I didn't fail. It just stopped. I ran out of time. this happened and that happened and this came up and that came up, and you know what, those are all valuable things. Like, those are all things that are true. Things come up in life and things happen in life, and time does become an issue, and maybe you have some life changes that radically rock your schedule and your day-to-day routine. It could be you could have had a baby, or you could have gone back to school, or maybe you got laid off, or maybe you got injured. Whatever it is, there's always going to be those things that come up that can derail us. I don't know if there was a significant event that made me stop after 3 years of doing the Inside Voice podcast, season 1, which I'm now calling it. I think there were probably a lot of things that kind of added up. I think the biggest thing is I just didn't necessarily have it all mapped out and planned out, and didn't really have a lot of resources for pivoting. Let's just put it that way. Obviously, losing my mom was a big shock to the system, and we talked a little bit about that in the podcast, but or in season 1. But eventually, you got to figure out how to operate around those things, and that's something that I don't think that obviously I didn't navigate it well, because the podcast did not last. But here we are doing it again, because again, we can make a shift and be the 8% and not be the 92%. So I think it is important, though, however, to figure out why it didn't work in the first place. I think there are a couple of things that hit us immediately. Like, when I ask you, well, why did you stop that workout program that you were doing? Why did you stop pursuing the business that you wanted? Why did you stop the podcast? Maybe you had your own podcast that you were doing and you stopped. I think the number one thing for us is time. I think that's the number one thing that keeps us from starting something in the first place, is well, I don't have the time to do it. Neither do I. I probably shouldn't lean forward too far. Man, you're seeing all the wrinkles. Yeah, lots happened since the last time we had the podcast. More wrinkles across the forehead, more crow's feet. I've gotten older. But time is one of those things, we all have the same amount of hours throughout the day. People say this all the time. Well, Beyonce's got 24 hours in a day, and Taylor Swift has 24 hours in a day. Yes. And I'm sure they have a million things pulling at them as well. We all have the same amount of time in each day. We got to use it wisely, But it is one of those things, they say that if it's important to you, you will make the time to do it. When I started doing a consistent workout routine, I made time for it. I thought, I'll squeeze it in after work. It'll be fine. No. I had to start getting my butte up a little bit earlier and making sure that I was knocking that out before any of the other stresses and stuff came in. Another goal that I've set for myself is to write a book. I don't have time to write a book. But if it's important to me and it's something that I want to do, I make the time to do it. So, not having time for something, it is it's something that does happen. It is something that can derail you when you're chasing a dream. I get it. It happens. That could be the reason why you gave up on whatever it is that you've set out for yourself in the first place. Totally fine. You got to get clear on what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think if you can tap into that, get crystal clear on exactly what you want to do, and then figure out why you want to do it, then suddenly it's oh, I do want to get up earlier to work on that. I do want to spend a late night this night and work on that. I do want to, spend a Saturday at the library writing, if I can do that, to accomplish writing a book. Why do you want to do it? What's your goal? Get clear on that stuff. And I think that it'll be a lot easier for you to begin again. Another thing that I think keeps us from, seeing things to completion, being a part of that 92%, is we're afraid. And we're afraid in two different ways. The first way, it's obvious, we're afraid of failing. And oftentimes we start something, we get going with it, we feel like we're gaining some momentum, and then little things happen, little failures here and there, little setbacks here and there, little ways. It's almost like you're walking on the sidewalk and there's a puddle. And you just think, well, I'm going to go home. There's a puddle in the sidewalk. No, 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 no. There's a puddle. There's a way around the puddle. Okay. Figure out how to get around the puddle and keep moving forward to your destination. Obviously, like when I stopped doing the first podcast, I had that fear of failure. I felt like I was failing in that podcast already, just not being prepared, putting things together, feeling like it was a last minute, to do, and that it wasn't quality work is what I felt. And maybe if you were with me in that season, like you feel differently about it. Thank you for that. But there were I took too much of those things that were very little, stacked them up on top of each other, and just called the whole thing a failure and walked away from it and called it a season in my life. If I can just be completely honest with you, that's the way that I saw it. So there's always going to be those little things that pop up in the midst of chasing your dreams that are setting you back, little obstacles and oppositions, which we'll get into as we move through this series. But you got to know how to get around them, So those little failures, the fear of failing in the first place, like a complete failure, that's a big part of why you can fall into that 92% and not see the things that you want to do in your life come to completion. I'm not saying that you need to, I feel like I have to say this, you don't need to completely derail yourself, put yourself into financial ruin or anything like that because of a dream that you're chasing. There may come a moment where you feel like I'm either all in or I'm not. That's on you. You've got to be able to figure out just how important and how much you're willing to bend in order to pursue the things that you want in your life. But don't ruin yourself. Like, let's be smart, okay? Let's try to pivot. There's a lot of ways to get around things without just completely ruining your life, if that makes any sense. So fear of failure definitely can wreck the things that you're chasing. There's also this thing like the fear of success, which sometimes I say this and people think it's bonkers. It's like, what do you mean? Of course I want to be successful. I'm not afraid of that. But there are things that come with success that can be scary. Obviously, a radical change to your lifestyle, radical change to the way that you're living, a radical change to your comfort zone that you've been living in for so long. Yeah, once you start being successful, it's like things change in your life, and sometimes those can be problems. That can be problematic for you, and it's scary. Leveling up and not knowing how to level up. How do you protect yourself? How do you protect your finances if you start seeing a lot of financial success? How do you protect your relationships? How do you protect the people in your life that are important to you? How do you not lose the things that you love in your life as you gain more success? There's things that can be scary once you start being successful. So I think that is another thing that can make people run, make people put their dreams on the back burner. Like, well, what if this does turn into something really, really big? And our default setting is comfort, right? They say that aging is like this battle against being comfortable, and chasing dreams, I feel like, is the same way. Like, you've got to get out of your comfort zone and try new things. Not everything is going to be easy. And if you start seeing success and momentum and things start growing and getting bigger, it's going to take more out of you. It's going to take more of you and more from you. And sometimes that can be scary, and some people just they're just not interested in it, So fear of making those mistakes, fear of, being successful, a fear of worthiness as well. I think I felt this towards the end of season 1 of the podcast, just feeling like, gosh, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe nobody's getting out of this. This doesn't feel like it's giving value to anyone right now. That is definitely something that can make you give up on your dreams. Identifying if there were roadblocks that got in the way. We talked about this with time, and we talked about this a little bit with fear as well, and just things coming at you that make you fearful of chasing your dreams. There are going to be roadblocks. There are going to be things that pop up that make chasing your dreams difficult. Like, that's just the name of the game, As you're growing, as you're changing, as you're leveling up, there's going to be challenges as you move forward. And sometimes those roadblocks can make you turn around and go home. Have you ever been driving somewhere? Maybe it's not somewhere that you have to be, but like you're thinking, oh, I just want to run through the drive-thru real quick and grab my favorite cheeseburger. This happens to me a lot. I just want those cheeseburgers. But you have so many things that just get in your way. It could be traffic. It could be construction. It could be a complete detour. And you're like, you know what? I don't even care anymore. This is not important to me anymore. Sometimes that can derail you and that can make you give up on things prematurely. And I feel like sometimes those things come up and it's like right before you're about to hit that level of success. Like you're almost there. You've been grinding, you've been working hard, you've been doing your thing day in and day out over and over and over again. And it's like you've gotten to this point where you're almost there. And then that last little roadblock hits you and you're like, I'm done. I'm out. I've reached my limit and I'm not going any further. That is definitely something that can derail you and make you want to give up on things. Identifying what stopped you in the first place is going to help you continue and move forward as you begin again, as you start again. So for me, I think a lot about, before even just like recording this episode, I had to remind myself, Jess, there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of podcasts doing what you want to do as well, speaking messages that you want to speak. Let's try to see that as a good thing, which sounds wild, I know. But, obviously, when you think about oversaturation in whatever you're trying to do, whatever your dream you're trying to chase, maybe you're trying to start a podcast, like there are so many podcasts out there. It's like, why would mine cut through the noise? Why would mine stand out in the midst of all of these other podcasts? That definitely crossed my mind. I'm trying to shift my focus a little bit. I'm trying to shift my mindset into thinking, Jess, there's so many podcasts out there. Why can't you be one of them? If, Joe Blow down the road can have his podcast talking about, toothpicks, why can't you come and talk about stuff like this? If you are serious about wanting to pour into people and support people and encourage people and speak messages that you believe that God has put on your heart, like, why can't you do that? Yeah, there's a lot out there. But there's also a lot out there. You can do anything. You can be anything. You can put this out into the universe and the podcast world, and it's okay because you can do it like everybody else does it. People all over the world do podcasts. So do a podcast. So transforming and changing and transferring that energy from like a spirit of fear of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can do this because there's so many other people that have already done it. Like, who would care about me, to like, yeah, so many other people have done this. You can totally do this. That to me is more motivating and more exciting. And it's definitely something that I'm clinging on to as we begin season 2. So as I said, we are starting off season 2 of the Inside Voice podcast with a series called Begin Again. I'm so thankful that you're here. I don't know why I'm about to get emotional. I don't need to get emotional. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. We can let this go. But it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's thrilling. I hope that you will be on this journey with me as we start over, as we begin again. Maybe that's also another thing that we need to do is we can't call it a starting over thing because then that makes us feel like we've completely lost our way. But we're just revving up the engine again. So if you need anybody to give you encouragement or support or a little pat on the back, permission, if you will, to begin again, I'm that person. So just get out there and do it. Next week, we are going to be talking about opposition because it's coming. Trust me. Anytime you want to get going on something, there's gonna be pushback. So we'll dive into that next week. Hope that you'll join me for that. Thank you so much for being here. Again, thank you to everybody that has already made this podcast possible. I would like to thank the wonderful team that put together the music bed. That is Tidal Wave Studios. I'll put information down in the comments. That's Ricardo and Natalie. They do a lot of great work, a lot of great audio work. They created that. Lauren Ligon, I will also put her information down there. She created my logo for me. She's very talented. She does a lot of painting, watercolors, that kind of stuff. She can make anything for you. So also, I would like to thank my producer, Oliver, who's my dog. Yep. He's not the best, but he's learning, just as we all are in life. I'll see you next week.